The demolition crew arrived at dawn, their bulldozers growling like beasts ready to devour Grandma's beloved home. Casting an eerie glow over Willow Lane, my parents had wasted no time. Within days of the will reading, they sold the property to developers for a quick fortune, claiming the old place was falling apart anyway. Their words echoed in my mind like a mocking refrain as I drove up the winding driveway one last time, my old sedan rattling over the potholes that Grandma had always meant to fix. Heart splintered into 1,000 shards, I parked haphazardly, stepping out into the crisp morning air that carried the faint, nostalgic scent of dew-kissed roses. This was goodbye not just to bricks and beams, but to the soul of my childhood, the sanctuary where love had bloomed unchecked. The foreman, a burly man named Jack with calloused hands that spoke of years wrestling with the earth and kind eyes crinkled at the corners from too many squints into the sun, waved me over as I approached. His overalls were streaked with dirt, and a hard hat perched jauntily on his graying hair. "You the granddaughter, Amelia, right?" he called out, his voice gravelly but warm, cutting through the rumble of idling engines. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Sorry about this, miss. Orders are orders. But if it helps, your grandma's garden here's a beauty. Shame to tear it up." His sympathy was genuine, a rare balm in the wound of betrayal. I managed a weak smile, my eyes tracing the overgrown paths where Grandma and I had wandered, her arm linked in mine, sharing tales of her youth. As the crew fired up their machines, the excavator's arm swung low, teeth biting into the soil of Grandma's pride, the garden she tended for 50 years. Roses in every hue imaginable, crimson like fresh blood, blush pink like dawn, ivory white like wedding veils. She'd planted them with stories attached, this one from a Parisian lover's bouquet, that one smuggled as a cutting from an English manor. The air filled with the churn of earth, the metallic groan of machinery, and my silent pleas for it all to stop. Then, a jarring clang echoed through the morning stillness. Jack's excavator has something solid. Not the soft give of roots or the crunch of rocks, but the unmistakable thud of metal against metal. "Hold up!" Jack shouted, killing the engine and jumping down from the cab with surprising agility for a man his size. The team gathered around, tools in hand, curiosity piqued. They dug carefully now, shovels slicing through the damp soil with precision, revealing glimpses of rusted edges. And there it was, a weathered chest, buried deep under the soil. Its surface etched with intricate patterns and engraved boldly with Grandma's initials EM in swirling script. Mud-caked and mysterious, it looked like something from one of her adventure stories, a relic from a bygone era. My breath caught as they hauled it up, the chain straining under its weight. The crew wiped away the grime, revealing aged wood bound in iron bands, a sturdy lock long since corroded. "Looks like it's been here a while," Jack muttered, his brow furrowed in intrigue. He grabbed a crowbar from his truck, wedging it into the seam with a grunt. The lid creaked open after a moment's resistance, releasing a puff of musty air that carried hints of lavender Grandma's favorite scent. The men stepped back, giving me space, their murmurs fading into the background. Inside, no glittering gold or sparkling jewels as one might fantasize, but something infinitely more precious. Stacks of yellow letters tied with faded ribbons, bundles of photographs curling at the edges, and a thick leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with gold leaf that had tarnished to a soft patina. My hands trembled as I reached in, fingers brushing the artifacts like sacred relics. And tucked beneath it all, a sealed envelope, addressed in Grandma's elegant script, "To my dearest Amelia." The sight of her handwriting, a looping cursive that danced across the page, brought fresh tears to my eyes. I tore it open carefully, as if mishandling it might shatter the fragile connection to her. "My dearest Amelia," it began, the ink still vivid despite the years. "If you're reading this, my plan worked. Your parents' greed blinded them to the true value here. The land itself hides a fortune. But more importantly, these pages hold our family's real legacy, the stories, the love, the truths they tried to bury." Her words washed over me like a revelation, a lifeline thrown across the chasm of grief. I sank to my knees in the dirt, the letter clutched to my chest, sobs mingling with the distant hum of the paused machinery. Grandma had known. This wasn't abandonment, it was a masterful gambit, a final act of protection. The journal, when I finally mustered the courage to open it, revealed everything in painstaking detail. Pages filled with her precise accounts, proof of my parents' embezzlement from her savings, siphoning funds under the guise of loans that were never repaid, forged documents they presented to her lawyers, bank statements clipped to entries, highlighted in her favorite red pen, showing transfers that coincided with their lavish trips or failed investments. But it wasn't just cold evidence. It was laced with her emotions, her disappointments poured out in private. Richard was once my bright boy, one entry read, but Marjorie's influence has turned him into a shadow of himself. They take and take, blind to the cost. Interspersed were warmer passages, memories of us. Amelia's laughter in the garden to the pure joy. She sees the world as I once did, full of wonder. Photographs slipped from the pages, black and white snapshots of Grandma in her prime, arm in arm with dashing figures in exotic locales, her smile radiant. Letters from long-lost friends, lovers, confidants, each one a thread in the tapestry of her life. These are the treasures money can't buy, she'd written in the margin. My heart ached with a mix of sorrow and awe. My eyes widened as I deciphered them, realizing they pointed to specific spots in the garden. With Jack's help, we followed the first set, pacing out from the ancient rosebush she called her thorned guardian. The crew, now fully invested in the unfolding drama, dug eagerly. Shovels bit into the earth again, and soon another clang resounded. A second chest, smaller but heavier, emerged from the depths. This one was reinforced with brass fittings, its lock intact but yielding to a key hidden in the first chest's lining. Inside, the gleam of gold caught the sunlight, coins from Grandma's adventurous youth, smuggled from forgotten travels across continents. Spanish doubloons, ancient Roman aurei, pieces from Ottoman hoards she'd acquired through wits and whispers in shadowy markets. Each one bore the patina of history, worth millions in today's collector's circles. She'd hidden it all, burying her secrets deep, knowing her children would sell the house without a second thought. Their eyes fixed on quick cash rather than buried wonders. But she trusted that fate or a diligent foreman like Jack would reveal it to me, the one who cherished her spirit. Jack grinned, wiping sweat from his brow with a dirt-streaked sleeve. Your grandma was a clever one, all right. This stops the demo, right? Can't bulldoze over buried treasure, legal nightmare. His chuckle was infectious, lightening the weight on my shoulders. The crew erupted in cheers, slapping backs and sharing wide-eyed glances. But for me, it was more than that. With the evidence in hand, I could confront my parents, unravel their web of deceit. The gold would secure my future, perhaps fund that artist retreat we dreamed of, transforming the property into a living legacy if I could halt the sale. I called Mr. Hargrove from the site, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. There's been a development, I said, explaining the fines. He arrived within the hour, briefcase in hand, his earlier composure cracking into genuine astonishment as he pored over the documents. This changes everything, Amelia. The will might have been coerced. These forgeries could invalidate their claim. The developers, notified of the archaeological significance, a stretch, but effective, paused operations pending investigation. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' upscale condo, the one Grandma's loans had financed, clutching the journal like a shield. They opened the door, faces paling at the sight of me, mud still clinging to my jeans. Father's smirk faltered. Mother's hands fluttered to her pearls. Amelia, what is this? He blustered, but I cut him off, laying out the evidence on their glass coffee table. Pages of embezzlement, the letters exposing their manipulations. Grandma knew, I said, my voice breaking but strong. She saw through you, and now so do I. The confrontation was raw, emotions spilling like the rain that had begun to fall outside. Father denied at first, then deflected, blaming hard times. Mother wept, apologies tumbling out, but they rang hollow. We did it for the family, she sobbed, but it was too late. The truth had unearthed itself, roots too deep to ignore. I left them with copies, the originals safe with Mr. Hargrove, who promised swift legal action. Disinheritance, restitution, words that tasted like victory, bittersweet. Back at Willow Lane that evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the roses in golden hues, I wandered the garden alone. The chests sat under tarps, guardians of secrets revealed. The gold secured my independence, but the letters and journal mended my shattered heart, weaving Grandma's voice back into my life. She left me not just riches, but justice, wrapped in secrets only the earth could keep. And in that moment, under the blooming roses, their petals unfurling like whispers, I felt her presence stronger than ever, guiding, loving, reminding me that true love always finds its way home, even through the darkest soil. The room smelled of stale coffee and polished oak, the kind of scent that clings to law offices where dreams are made or broken. I sat there, heart pounding like a war drum, as the lawyer cleared his throat and began reading Grandma Elara's will. The air was thick with anticipation, a suffocating mix of polished leather chairs and the faint, musty undertone of old documents stacked on the mahogany desk, casting long shadows across the faces of my family. My parents, Richard and Marjorie, perched on the edge of their seats like vultures eyeing a fresh carcass. And me, Amelia, the 28-year-old granddaughter who had been Grandma's constant companion in her twilight years, feeling like an outsider in my own bloodline. Grandma Elara wasn't just a relative, she was my world. Born in the roaring 20s, she'd lived a life that read like an adventure novel, traveling across Europe in her youth, collecting artifacts from forgotten corners of the world, and building a modest fortune through sheer wit and determination. Her Victorian house on Willow Lane was more than a home. It was a museum of memories. Towering bookshelves lined with first editions, crystal vases from Parisian flea markets, and that ornate grandfather clock that chimed with a melancholy that always made her smile. Time is a thief, Amelia, she'd say, her voice like rustling silk, but memories? They're eternal thieves' bane. I spent countless summers there as a child, escaping the chaos of my parents' nomadic lifestyle. They were always chasing the next big thing, my father's failed business ventures. My mother as endless parade of investment opportunities that drained their accounts faster than a sieve holds water. Grandma had bailed them out more times than I could count, her generosity a quiet rebellion against their recklessness. Family is family, she'd murmur, but her eyes would harden when they weren't looking. She saw through their facades, the way my father would charm loans out of her with promises of repayment that never came, or how my mother would feign concern while eyeing Grandma's jewelry with covetous glances. Now, here we were, in this sterile office, waiting for the final verdict on her legacy. The lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, his voice steady and impersonal as he unfolded the crisp pages. I, Elara Montgomery, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare. He droned through the preliminaries, the legalese blurring into a monotonous hum. My fingers twisted in my lap, nails digging into my palms. I glanced at my parents. Father's jaw was set, a muscle twitching in his cheek, while Mother smoothed her skirt repeatedly. Her pearls, Grandma's pearls, glinting under the fluorescent lights. To my beloved granddaughter Amelia, Mr. Hargrove continued, and my breath caught. This was it. Grandma had promised me something special, whispered it in her hospital room just weeks before she passed. You'll see, my dear. It's not about the money. It's about the heart. Hope surged through me like a warm tide, maybe the house, or at least part of it. Enough to start that artist retreat she'd always dreamed of us creating together. We'd sketch plans on napkins, laughing over tea studios in the attic, gardens for inspiration, a place where creativity could bloom unchecked. But then the words landed like a sledgehammer. I bequeath to Amelia my collection of personal journals and photographs to be kept in trust until she deems fit. Journals? Photographs? My mind reeled. That was it? Sentimental scraps while the real treasures went elsewhere? Mr. Hargrove paused, his eyes flicking over the page. The family estate, including the old Victorian house on Willow Lane and all its contents, shall be divided equally among my children, my son, Richard, and my daughter-in-law, Marjorie. The room tilted. My parents, divided equally? But Grandma had no other children. Father was her only son and mother. Well, she wasn't blood, but apparently that didn't matter. The house, with its creaking floors that held echoes of laughter, its hidden nooks where Grandma stashed her secrets, worth more than gold, that safe behind the painting in the study, teasing me with its mysteries. I'd imagined uncovering it one day. Perhaps finding old love letters or rare coins from her travels. Now it was theirs? Father's eyes gleamed with undisguised triumph as he leaned back, crossing his legs with a satisfied sigh. It's only fair, Amelia. We've supported the family all these years. Supported? The word ignited a fire in my chest. Supported how? By borrowing against Grandma's mortgage to fund their latest scammer, revolutionary app that never launched? By leaving me to care for her in her final months while they jetted off to networking conferences that yielded nothing but debt? I remembered the nights I sat by her bedside, holding her hand as she reminisced about her life. Your parents mean well, but greed blinds them, she'd said once, her voice weak but sharp. Promise me you'll fight for what's right. Mother avoided my gaze, fidgeting with those damned pearls, twisting them like a noose around her neck. We didn't expect this, darling, she murmured, but her voice lacked conviction. Lies, they'd probably pressured Grandma, whispered in her ear during their rare visits. I could picture it. Father with his salesman smile, Mother with her faint sympathy. Betrayal burned in my throat, hot and bitter, rising like bile. How could Grandma do this? Had her mind slipped in the end? Or was this some cruel test? I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech that mirrored the scream building inside me. Tears blurred the faces around me, Mr. Hargrove's surprised expression, my parents' smug complacency. This can't be right, I choked out, my voice trembling. She promised ... she ... But words failed me. The lawyer cleared his throat again. There's one more clause, Miss Montgomery. But I didn't care. What more could they take? My dignity, my memories? I stormed out, the door slamming behind me like a final punctuation on our fractured family. The hallway outside was a blur of beige walls and echoing footsteps. I burst into the street, the cool autumn air slapping my face, mingling with the hot tears streaming down my cheeks. Cars honked in the distance, pedestrians hurried by, oblivious to the earthquake that had just shattered my world. I leaned against the building's brick facade, gasping for breath. Grandma's face floated in my mind, her silver hair framing kind blue eyes, the laugh lines that deepened when she told stories of her escapades. Like the time she'd smuggled antique coins out of Italy in the lining of her coat, or how she outwitted a con artist in Morocco with nothing but her sharp tongue. Those stories had been my escape, my inspiration. She taught me to paint, to dream big, to see beauty in the mundane. Life's not about what you own, Amelia, she'd say, but what you build with your heart. Yet here I was, inheriting scraps while my parents claimed the kingdom. The injustice clawed at me. They sell the house in a heartbeat. I knew it'd turn it into condos or flip it for profit, erasing every trace of her spirit. I wandered aimlessly, ending up in a nearby park, collapsing onto a bench beneath a canopy of turning leaves. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying the faint scent of rain. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through old photos, Grandma and me in the garden, her hands dirt-streaked from planting roses, U.S. baking pies in the kitchen, flour dusting our noses. Her frail form in the hospital, still smiling. Not everything is as it seems, my dear, she'd whispered in those final days, her grip surprisingly strong. Trust the unexpected. I dismissed it as the ramblings of pain medication, but now those words echo like a riddle. What if there was more? Or something buried in those journals she'd left me? But no, the will seemed ironclad, Mr. Hargrove had been thorough. Grandma's signature was there, witnessed and notarized. Still, doubt nagged at me. My parents had visited her alone a few times near the end. Had they coerced her? Forged something? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I needed to see those journals, but they were in the house now, their house. That evening, back in my cramped apartment, a one-bedroom walk-up in the city's less glamorous district, I paced the floor. The rain now pattering against the windows like insistent fingers. The place was a far cry from Willow Lane. Peeling wallpaper, a leaky faucet that dripped in rhythm with my racing thoughts. I poured a glass of cheap wine, sinking into the worn couch. Memories flooded me, unbidden and vivid. I was 10, hiding in the attic during a thunderstorm, Grandma beside me with a flashlight and a book of fairy tales. Storms pass, Amelia, but stories endure. Or at 15, when my parents forgot my birthday amid another financial crisis. Grandma threw a surprise party, complete with a cake she'd baked herself, decorated with edible flowers from the garden. "You're my sunshine," she'd said, hugging me tight. And then the harder times. Watching her age, her steps slowing, her hands trembling as she poured tea. I'd moved closer to help, quitting my dead-end job as a graphic designer to freelance from home, spending days with her. We'd talk for hours about her regrets, her loves lost, her triumphs. "I never had a daughter," she'd confide, "but you fill that void. Why then this betrayal and death?" Anger morphed into grief, sobs racking my body. I cried for the lost dreams, the artist haven we planned. For the house that held her essence, the scent of lavender in the linens, the creak of the porch swing on summer nights. For the safe she'd hinted at, saying, "One day, it'll be yours, full of wonders." Wonders my parents would pawn without a second thought. As the storm intensified, lightning illuminating the room in stark flashes, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this stand. Tomorrow, I'd demand access to the journals, comb through them for clues, maybe consult another lawyer. Grandma had always been clever, layers upon layers in her tales. Perhaps her will was the same as surface deception hiding deeper truths. That night, as rain lashed the windows of my tiny apartment, I replayed every memory. Grandma's frail hand in mine during her final days, her whisper, "Not everything is as it seems, my dear. Trust the unexpected." I thought it was delirium. Little did I know, the real inheritance was about to unearth itself, not in a will, but in the dirt.